Hello, hello, hello! Cheerio, old chap! Hey, we're here this morning to discuss the colonies and how they become America, how they rebelled against Great Britain and shocked us aside and started their own country. And here to tell you about it is the man with two halves of a brain, he who shall have no name, that dastardly devil, the digital prisoner. Alrighty ho, old chap. Alright, so we're here today to talk about a general synopsis of the 13 colonies, the forming of America, the Articles of Confederation leading up to them seeing the need for the writing of the Constitution. So, to begin with, the 13 colonies, and those were Georgia, South and North Carolina, Virginia, New York, Maryland, Delaware, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, and Connecticut. It all started as one colony in 1607, Jamestown, and that's that mysterious time way back when, you had some colonies disappearing, but Jamestown is the one that kind of got everything going. And England continued to build and continue to prosper here. And all the colonies were originally loyal to England. At this time, it was a period of colonization for the Western Europe. Spain was colonizing, England was colonizing, France was colonizing. And England had set up colonies in a large part of the world. All the way over here in the Americas, they had them in India and Australia. They were setting up colonies all over. And so they wanted to create a stronger central government. But the colonists here didn't approve because they weren't getting to have a say-so in this government. King George III was crowned king in 1760, and he wanted a stronger central government for this larger British Empire. And so he levied a series of taxes, such as, the stamp tax, the sugar tax, and so forth. And so they were taxing things. Now get this, these taxes were like 2-3%. So if they were to see the taxes that we have today, that would really probably blow their mind and start a whole nother war. But these colonists didn't have a say-so because they had no representation, and this is where the slogan "No taxation without representation" came from. And over this decade of taxes being created, and then the colonists would kind of rebel a little bit, and then new taxes would come about, a war began, and it's known as the American Revolution. Colonists formed the Continental Congress, who eventually opposed the king. Now, they tried to be diplomatic and say, hey, we need representation and stuff, and the king just kept shooting them down, saying, hey, nope, no way. You're going to do what we say. Well, a guy by the name of Thomas Paine, and if you look at some of the other stuff we've talked about, Enlightenment and stuff, we talk about Thomas Hobbes and John Locke, some very important people there. But Thomas Paine's Common Sense. This was a little pamphlet booklet that was written telling people in America that it's common sense that you get from under Britain's thumb. And it convinced a lot of people who still didn't think that America should break away, because there was a big debate in America at the time. Should we or should we not break away from Britain? Well, Common Sense helped convince a lot of people that were still hoping to work things out that you're never going to be able to work things out with Britain, and you needed to break away. And so the Second Continental Congress decided to draft the Declaration of Independence. Okay, this is over a year after the war had already began. Lexington and Concord shot hot around the world. It was mostly written by Thomas Jefferson, but he did call upon ideas from Hobbes, Locke, Paine, a lot of these great thinkers and stuff. He drew from a lot they had to say. It formally declared a separation from England. It said, hey, this is our formal notice that we are cutting ties with England. And we are officially forming the United States of America. Now, had they lost the war, this would be, nothing but just another document. But seeing that they won the war, it became the beginning of America. The Treaty of Paris. The American Revolution lasted from 1775 to 1781. The treaty that ended the war was signed in 1782 in Paris. Britain recognized that the United States was a free country, agreed upon borders with the United States, gave the United States fishing rights off of Canada. Property would be returned to loyalists. Those who supported Britain during the war, their property would be returned to them. Now, it wasn't always in the greatest conditions, but it would be returned. They recognized the rights of creditors, loyalists, and prisoners of war. Big part about that is creditors, that all the debts that had occurred during the war would be paid. Both nations had access to the Mississippi River. Remember, back then, that was one of the greatest forms of travel, was on water, and so the Mississippi River was very important. Governments of the United States. The Continental Congress served as the pseudo-government for the first year of the Revolution in 1776, the year the Declaration of Independence was written. July 4th, that's when we celebrate. Continental Congress created the frame work for the Articles of Confederation. It wasn't until 1781 that it was ratified. And in the meantime, states created their own constitutions. And a lot of them had these three main themes in them. Popular sovereignty. It's where the people have the right to run their country. They're the ultimate authority. That the government receives its authority to run the country based on the people. Natural rights. They're listed out rights. Or they list out rights in these constitutions, state constitutions, or they were like Bill of Rights. And they were rights that could not be taken away from people. These are people's inalienable rights, if you've ever heard that term. Separation of powers. It separated the government into three branches: judicial, legislative, and executive. Now, the Articles of Confederation is what the federal government was writing. It was ratified in 1781, and now it had only one branch, Congress. And each state had representatives in the new Congress, but only had one vote. Some of the powers that Congress had is they could borrow and coin money, means make money. They could deal with foreign affairs, like dealing with England or any other, France or what other countries. They could declare war and fight wars. And they could intermediate between state conflicts. But now the states had a lot of the power. And so the Articles of Confederation was kind of weak because of this. And it wound up being a government that wouldn't last. And some of these weaknesses was they couldn't enforce the decisions that they made. So whenever they made a decision about something, they had to rely upon the states just doing it because they couldn't enforce it. They had no power to tax, so that they, other than the goodwill of the states, they had no money coming in unless they borrowed it. They couldn't require states to give money to the national government. They couldn't pass laws unless 9 of the 13 states were in agreement. And they couldn't regulate trade between each state. And at this time, all the different states had their own currencies. So you really needed something to regulate trade. A a lot of problems were going on. A lot of debts, all these debts from the American Revolution. The country had, the states had, um, individuals had. There's a lot going on with trying to collect on these debts. Shays' rebellion is a result of these debts. Land was being taken from farmers. This military leader named Shay led uprising of them in this major revolt that it took a very strong militia to put down. They realized a change must come. And so they called for a new congressional meeting to go back and revise the Articles of Confederation. And so this is where we'll talk about the forming of the Constitution next time. So until then, deuces!